Okay. Hi. Good evening. Please confirm, can you hear me? And can you see my screen as well?
Yes, I can hear you and see your screen.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, I would like us to make this session as interactive as possible, since we'll be doing some hands-on, since we'll be having some hands-on experience as well. As you can see behind, um, today we'll be looking at sketching and wireframing in UI UX. I mean, do you have an idea, or does anybody here have an idea what wireframes are about? If you want to speak, you can unmute if you want to speak. So let me know. Anybody? Okay, I guess not. So basically, a wireframe is you can compare it to a skeleton. Yes, pretty much. It's more like a skeleton. It's like the simplest form of your digital product that's as you're designing, right? The whole idea of having a wireframe is for you to establish the layout or the structure and the flow of your design, I mean, of your product before you start the actual design. So a wireframe is, I mean, from the word alone, wireframe. I mean, if you've used any 3D modeling software, you could be familiar with wireframes as well. So it consists of pretty much shapes. You don't have to go, I mean, you don't go into details when you're creating a wireframe, because the idea is for you to just focus on the important things. If you start going into details, the way a finished product is going to look, you're going to get distracted from what you're trying to achieve with the wireframe. And most wireframes don't involve colors. It's usually just black, white, gray, except in, several cases. But ideally, you shouldn't have any other colors. Why? Because colors are distracting, and you also don't want to start mixing up or start you don't want to start worrying about what colors work and what color does not work. That's the idea of it just being monotonous. Yeah. So as I said, a wireframe is the low fidelity of your UI. So as I said again, it focuses on functionality, not on visuals. That's the main reason why it's just stripped down to basic shapes. So when you are doing a wireframe, it's one of the first things you're going to be doing when you're designing, because it's meant to give you an overview of a flow. Maybe let's say you're designing a login flow, and you want to understand or visualize how that flow is supposed to work. That's where you have wireframes. That's where wireframes come in handy. There are two different types of wireframes, because some people will tell you, okay, there is sketching and there is wireframing. They are similar, but when you talk about wireframes, you can think of sketching to be under wireframing, because some people do the non-digital wireframe, which is hand-drawn, which most people always refer to as sketching, and they think of wireframe as the digital one. But ideally, there is hand-drawn wireframe and there is the digital wireframe. And under the digital wireframe, you can have high and you can have low fidelity, mid fidelity. So the low fidelity is very basic, just shapes, just the most basic shapes you can think about, like your squares, your rectangles, your circles. Those are the things that you see featured in a low fidelity. Then there is the mid fidelity where you start seeing more details of the screen you are representing. Another importance of having a wireframe is it's easy to iterate. It's easy to make changes. Instead of moving straight into a finished look or a polished design, which if you have to change something, is probably going to be stressful for you to start deleting things you've probably spent some time designing. So the wireframe is there for you to be able to brainstorm. As you're brainstorming, you are refining your wireframes. And it's also something you can share to other members of your team so that when they offer feedback, you are able to implement those changes with ease. In a case where you're working in a big team, or in fact, in any team at all, you want to carry your stakeholders along. You want people to be able to, I mean, while you don't have the finished product, you still want them to be able to see how this thing is supposed to work. You can also use a wireframe for that purpose because it's difficult to explain something to someone using just words. You tell them, oh, the user is going to click on this and this happens. It's hard. So when you visualize it with the wireframe, as much as it's not detailed, it also helps to make sure that everybody is following what you are doing in the team. Let me continue. So tips for effective sketching, right? Talk about focus on structure. As I mentioned earlier, you don't need to worry about the details. That is the beauty of wireframes. It's very, very simple. And you don't also need to stress on, oh, this is not straight or this is this is crooked. But I mean, when you're doing it, you also still need to have your layout in mind. So you don't just put things in an order that has no meaning. Then you can also use symbols and annotations for navigation, right? So when people are supposed to click, I mean, if it's something like, okay, tap and it swipes to the left, you can represent that with an arrow. Or maybe if it's like a drop down, you can represent that with an arrow as well. In as much as we are aiming for simplicity, you also need to make sure that people understand what you are trying to represent. Does that make sense so far? Let me know if I need to go back to anything. Any questions so far?
No, ma.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So there are different tools you can use for your wireframing. There is Figma, which we are all familiar with. There is Adobe Sketch, Balsamic, Miro, Whimsical. There is also wireframe, wireframe.cc. Don't get so hung on the tool we are using. The most important thing is, okay, how efficient is this tool? How efficient are you as well? And the end result, right? So you can decide to use Figma. I mean, you can decide to use Figma, Figma proper, or you can decide to even use FigJam. But for this purpose, I feel like Figma is more, for me at least, Figma is more flexible because it's always easy to switch between the tools you are using. Adobe, I mean, this is a past story. So there is Sketch, as we've seen. There is Miro. I think you can look, I mean, you can explore Miro. At least when I was starting, it was Miro that was recommended then. But just as I said again, it has more to do with you than with the tool you're working with. Yeah, so best practices for wireframing. Ensure, I mean, we've talked about it being simple, right? Ensure consistency. Now, if you are using a particular shape to represent something, maybe let's say a button, right? You are using maybe a rectangle with certain blah 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 for your button. If you suddenly start using circles for your button, it's no longer consistent. So try to stick with different things you have assigned different values, so that you don't confuse yourself and you don't confuse the stakeholders that are working with you as well. Another thing, prioritize content hierarchy. Um, when we talk about hierarchy, I mean, there is the visual hierarchy, which we are all familiar with, I hope, which has to do with layout. But this that talks about content hierarchy is for you to define the elements that are important. So let's say you are working on a wireframe that is supposed to be for sign up page, right? You know, a basic sign up page, you probably have some images behind, maybe a small button that probably takes you to support, and maybe something that takes you to documentation, maybe something that talks about the version of the app you're using. Those things are not important because they are not the things you're focusing on. What you're trying to look at is the sign-in flow or the sign-up flow, whichever it is. So you're going to focus more on the elements that would help the user achieve that task that you are trying to, I mean, that would complete that flow you are trying to design. So for something like sign up, you would focus more on your input fields, because when you're signing up, you definitely have to enter some details and you have to click a button which should which should direct you to another page, or one that could redirect you in case you are somebody, if it's signing in, or yeah, if it's signing in or signing up, you can have either you have an account or you don't have an account. So prioritize those things that are necessary for that flow. You won't start bothering about, oh, how is the background of this screen supposed to look, or where should we put the app version or stuff like that. Those are very unimportant. I mean, they are unimportant at that stage. You also need to gather feedback early, because if you do a wireframe and nobody sees it when you're working in a team, right? And nobody sees it and you just continue the design, it's as good as you not do the wireframe, because the essence is for people to be able to give you feedback or for you to be able to iterate on what you're designing. So always get feedback and use that feedback to refine what you have always. Yeah. Next thing is sketching and wireframing workflow. You need to understand the requirements. Just as I gave an example, when you're creating a wireframe for a sign-up flow, you need to understand what the goal of the user is. I mean, what the essence of that flow you're designing the wireframe for is. Sketch your ideas. You can decide to start with paper and pen, and digitize, or you can go straight into your digital tool and start creating your wireframe there. Test and iterate, just as I mentioned. Always work with feedback. Um, just to conclude, this is it's the most basic step, or one of, okay, let me not say the most basic, but one of the basic steps you're going to take when you're designing a product. Over time, there are some cases where, okay, you're working for an external client and they have their requirements. Their time, time is not favorable, or, it's not something you're probably going to need feedback to iterate on. In that case, you can always skip certain things. So you need to, your workflow also needs to be flexible. You can't say, okay, I must do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. No, you're going to have to be able to adapt to the requirements or to the needs of your client. Is there any question so that we can look at how to create a wireframe, maybe with an exercise or something? Any question?
Sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
My question is it necessary for me to like design a wireframe before I can actually design my actual design? I hope you can get what I mean.
Okay. I mean, I just okay, that was the last thing I pretty much talked about. It's not, it's an ideal process, but it's not compulsory. So when you're with a team or you're working for a client, if you have a tight deadline, or maybe it's something that, okay, they've done the research and they are just giving you PRODs to work with, you can always keep wireframes. But I find that somehow wireframing still comes in, even if it's not something you're going to share with anybody. But for you personally, I think it's always good to sketch out, I mean, to sketch the idea you have first before going into Figma. Because if you just go into Figma, sometimes it's just like you're wasting your time, you're just running around and you just crash. So always have something that you can reference. Let me not necessarily call it a wireframe, but have something, a structure that you can reference so that when you're designing, it's just easier. But at least for all the time I've been designing, I don't think I've ever skipped wireframe, at least for myself, not for any other person. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have another question.
Okay.
So from the last class, I noticed that our tutor said you can actually use either pencil and um, book to design a wireframe. Is that okay for us to do it too?
Yes, definitely. You can use your paper and pencil.
Yes. Okay. Thank
Yeah. So the whole idea of having a digital wireframe is for you to be able to, I mean, for you to share it easily with other people. And in that case, when people give you feedback and you need to make changes, you would also find that it's easier to make changes when you have a digital wireframe, because you're not going to have to waste paper or, start erasing or stuff like that. Any other question before we go in? But let me confirm, um, are you guys on your laptops right now, or do you have something you can sketch with right now? If we want to do an exercise, let me know. Like, I'm not getting any feedback from anybody. Do you have something you can sketch with? Let me know how to go about this exercise.
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I'm not with my laptop right now, but can we use pencil and
Yeah, you can. You can. It's just for you to be able to practice and follow along. Because I'll also be doing mine in Figma as yeah, as we're going through the exercise. So let me just share a Figma screen. I think you guys are working on something like African food app or something. Is that right?
Yes.
that's a project that we are
That's,
assigned to, but we are not really assigned to it yet.
Okay. Okay. So in that case, okay, if you're with your laptop, you can always open a Figma file and try to create a wireframe. So let's see. We want to create a wireframe. You are trying to let's start with a sign up flow. Sign up flow for what? Okay, let's just do the food app still, right? Let's just do the food app still. So we're going to start with a frame, or you can use a rectangle, but I prefer to use frames because I mean frames contain other things, but rectangle is just standalone rectangle. And thanks to Figma, you already have frames you can refer to, some phone specifications, measurements. I always go for 13 mini. You can go for any screen size you want. I mean, this is for future designs, but I find that it's easier to scale up when you are working with a developer. It's easier for developers to scale up your design than to scale down. So this frame size just feels balanced for that purpose. But as you're working in a team, you definitely talk with your colleagues or whomever to know what they want you to work with. I mean, what to work with them. So let's just continue with the let's just continue. So for a sign-up flow, as I mentioned, there are things that we know must be there. We have buttons. Let me increase this font size. So we're definitely going to have buttons. We're going to have some input field. You're going to have maybe the brand or product logo. There's probably going to be some imagery, but let's just leave it at imagery. What else? What else can you think about on the sign up page? It's pretty much just buttons, input, product logo, blah blah blah. So we have our screen, right? We just want to represent these things as simply as possible. So let's start with a rectangle. So depending on the idea you have in your head for your sign-up flow, the layouts can also differ. But this is just for me. I want to have something like an image at the top with the app logo, then this the input fields would follow, and then the button. Your own could be totally different. It could just be input fields or whichever design direction you want to go with. It's totally up to you. Now, let me just so for images, if you find these are like this is the basic way to represent an image. It just shows that there is something here. So I want to have an app logo somewhere here, right in the middle. Let me just use white as the field or add the stroke. Then I want to have some input field. I mean, I'm not bothering about the measurements right now. I just want to, okay. So for this input field, if you want to show that this means, so I mean, maybe you want to say, okay, this is for email address. You might not want to type out an email address like this. You can just use the @ symbol, and anybody who is reading this should understand. I hope so. So input, I mean, you can probably have, what is this at the bottom? Okay, name or something. Let me just bring this over to this side. So they're going to enter their name. Something else would be a password. Right, so password. What else? I mean, is there another thing? I don't know. I don't think so. So let me just go straight to adding a button. So adding a button, this should be sign up or create account. Come on. Create account. So I'm just going to group these together. I'm going to place this somewhere here. Let's decide to add it. Here is somewhere here. So as you can see, I'm just sticking with gray, white, and black for this. So looking at this, I can tell, okay, if I'm designing, the things I'm going to add are input fields button. I just want to see how the flow is going to be from, the flow to create an account, right? So let me just continue. So if I enter password and whatever, mind you, when you're doing this, you probably have a user flow that you're referencing as well. So it's not always going to be from the top of your head that you know what field or what elements to add. But let's continue. So after adding an account, after your name, this, um, some people might decide to do, Charles, you want to ask a question?
Yes, please. I want to ask the user
Okay.
flow that you mentioned. Um, we are supposed to get the user flow for ourselves, or let's say if we are working with a team, the team would get that for us, or the client.
It could be, it could be either of the things you've mentioned now. If you are on the team, you are working as the UI UX designer, as it should be actually. If you're working as UI UX designer, so you've probably done your research. From your research, you've done some ideation, some brainstorming to note the features you want to have. You've done some analysis, that's computer analysis. From all of that, you start defining your user flow. So it could be you doing that work, or if you're in a team where there's a product manager or somebody else who is strictly doing research, they can provide you with user flows or user stories that you are going to work with.
Okay. I have another question.
Okay.
The question I want to ask is the sketch. I thought, or would I say, from the module that you shared just now, I saw something like not using full details, or like the
Yeah.
one you are using now, name, email, password, create account. I thought we would just use maybe straight lines to identify that there will be a text there.
Okay. So as I mentioned, that is also up to you, but you want to make sure that somebody who is viewing the wireframe or whatever you're sharing knows what this thing stands for. So I added this because they are not a lot of details. They are at most 1-2 words, right? So if I wanted to represent something like a text, maybe somebody has entered a text, right? Why am I drawing rectangle? Okay, why am I drawing text like that? So it's meant to be line. If it's a case where you want to show that, some lines of text have been entered, definitely you should just use these lines to represent it. Is that,
Okay.
yeah, as long as what you're adding does not overcomplicate the the wireframe, it's fine. Because some people, if they're designing, instead of create an account, they just label it as button. But I feel like it's just ambiguous what this button is supposed to do. So
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, sure.
Hello, ma.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if this person is done with his own question. Okay,
I think it's done.
okay,
Yes,
okay.
I'm done
So
with
I
my
wanted to
question.
ask. Okay, thank you very much. So I have a question I wanted to ask.
Okay.
First of all, I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, so first of all, I would like to ask the what we are trying to create now, is it a low frame or a middle frame? Because to my understanding about low frame is there's no um, text at all. That's
Oh,
one. And
oh,
secondly, how did you put the that image that you have in lines on both ends? How did you come about that? Thank you very
sorry,
much.
how that about, sorry, could you repeat that last question?
Okay, above there you put logo and image, right? In
Yeah.
in the wireframe. So I wanted to ask, how did you create it? How did you create the image and logo?
Ah, I'm struggling to hear you when you're making your last statement. How did I get to what? Sorry.
How did you achieve that? The image and the logo.
How did I achieve it? When you say achieve, is
Yes,
it how did I draw it or how did I know it's supposed to be there?
yeah, yes. How did you do it? Sorry.
How did I make it? Oh, I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
pretty much use the rectangle tool and the circle tool. So, um, in Figma, right, you can go into edit your vectors. That's how I added these lines. You could have approached it a different way, but this is just easier. I mean, I find this easier pretty much. So I selected the rectangle. Let me just run that rectangle here. I selected the rectangle. Now, this is how it is when you draw a shape, a rectangle, right? If you hit enter one more time, you can then edit the anchor points. So that's what I just did. I just hit it and then use the pen to draw the lines. I hope that's what you're asking.
Yes, yes, exactly. So my
Okay,
network was breaking then.
okay, okay. Yeah. Then your first question was low fidelity. Sorry, you said low fidelity and mid fidelity, right?
Yes, yes, exactly, ma'am.
Your low fidelity doesn't necessarily I mean, you can have certain words or certain things to annotate, some actions or something, just some annotations. Your mid fidelity is more refined. Okay, so just with the example I was giving this guy, or when he asked the question about the text, right? Your low fidelity could have this. You could use this to represent the text, just like this. But mid fidelity, you see that most people insert content there, but the other graphical elements still don't have any attention. You don't necessarily draw any attention to them. Your low fidelity as well, as you can see from what I'm doing here, I was not bothered about the spacing or any measurement, if you notice, when I was drawing all these things. But when you're doing your mid fidelity, you start paying attention to those things, right? Because all that is left is then transitioning to high fidelity. But most times you just see yourself going from low fidelity to high fidelity, because I feel like mid fidelity is sort of unnecessary to me, not to every other person. So, as I mentioned, low fidelity, you're just putting things not entirely randomly, but you're not paying attention to things like, okay, what is the spacing between this and this, or what's the size of my button, or any of those things. But here, but for mid fidelity, you can start refining. So mid fidelity is just for you to refine. You can still see some people who do mid fidelity and you, they still represent the text with lines. So honestly, at the end of the day, everything is still subjective. You should know what works for you at the end of the day. Is that okay? Is this still there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
yes. I'm okay. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem. Okay, so moving on. After this page, the next thing we're probably going to expect, some people could have verification, verify your email, or if it's a product that does not need verification, the next thing is going to be a pop-up that or I mean a message that you have successfully created your account, right? So we're going to do that next. You could have, we could have said, okay, let's now this is why I said all these things are subjective. You can decide to leave the screen as it is and then draw just draw a rectangle over this. Let me just move this up. Draw a rectangle over this. The way you do your modals, right? And just reduce the opacity to maybe 30% or something, maybe 40. And then start doing your confirmation, this thing. That's circle, whatever, if you want to have an icon or something here. And this is just to say that you've logged in or you signed up successfully. And you're probably going to have a button here that would probably say continue. So, yeah. So something like this. You can decide to have this on an entirely new page where, let me just delete everything here. Center, duplicate this. So this is your success, and you're probably going to have some text that says, okay, blah, 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 you've successfully signed up, and maybe it's going to carry the next instructions for the user, right? So this is where this line comes in handy because nobody cares what the confirmation message is saying at this point. I'll probably just increase the line width and yeah, center this, focus of whatever, and continue button. That's just it. So from the success screen, now we're thinking another scenario. Let's say that this person already has an account, right? So we're probably going to have a button which is going to be like a text, pretty much. So in this case, you can decide to type it out, or you can decide to just use whatever that is ambiguous for you to represent that. Let me just call it CTA2. I know what it means because it's me designing it. Now, if I'm sharing this with somebody else, I would need to add some explanation that I'll need to annotate and say that, oh, this is what this means, right? So if I had decided to just say already, or no, let me not use already, have an account, it still doesn't take away the essence of the low fidelity wireframe because I'm still just focusing on the things that are important. So anything that works for you and your team, that is what you should stick with. Okay, so I already have an account. That means that the next page I should be seeing, if I should select that, let me just put it somewhere here. If I select that, is for me to enter my email and password and then sign in. Then this is not going to change to new here because yeah. So in this case, you would also know that some people are going to forget. It's possible that some people don't remember their passwords. You can have the forgot password button somewhere here. So you can just decide to make this smaller if you wish So I'll just reduce my own to 16. I can also decide to just use a line to represent it, but I'm going to make sure that I make it clear to whoever I'm sharing it with that this is what I mean. So forgot password. Okay, so if the person is saying, okay, that they've forgotten their password, they're supposed to reset their password. So this is probably new password, old password. All of these things depend on what you're going for. What did I just do? Okay. New password. Maybe confirm password. And this is new password. And this is what is the right word to use? Set password or whatever. And then anything that sounds good to you, just use it. But I hope you all get the idea of the wireframe. If you continue to push this and you want to create maybe like a dashboard now, you having that food app that you guys are supposed to start with in mind, you're probably going to have you've done your research, you've seen things like child deck where you have different categories or something that are going to be here. So this is probably going to be a line of text to say what this category is. Let me just change the color to something similar and increase this to like 4 and probably round this because I just want it to look like a rectangle. Yeah. So this is probably the category name or something. And just put this together. Let me just delete all of this because I want to have the same duplicate. So, yeah. So you probably have something like this, and you probably have maybe the section where they show deals that they have or something like that. You can also represent that with this. It's probably a picture, so you can always go in to draw this to show that this is a picture. So you can't use this and then suddenly change what you're using to represent a picture or represent a button. That come on, that is not ideal at all, at least for the sake of being consistent in whatever you're doing. Delete, you probably have what else? Okay, you probably have your navigation. Yeah, that's right. Navigation at the bottom. So yes, Shadrach, go ahead.
Okay, ma. Sorry, ma. There's something I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Yes, I saw the way you were doing something. I don't know how you were doing. Like the text initially they were single, but there's the way you make them go together in line, like
This
as
one,
if you are grouping them or something.
are you talking about this section?
Not even from that section. I noticed it from the creating of accounts section, forgotten password section, when you join the forgotten password together with the confirmed password, then in the way you separated it later to reduce the size or stuff like that.
Okay. I mean, there's really no
In the
trick.
confirmed, in the forgotten password. You
Yeah,
know,
so like
we are
this.
learning, so we don't know. We need to learn all these small details.
Okay. So I mean, this is me nitpicking sort of anyway, but it's just for me to make sure that certain things are aligned. So if you're using Figma, Figma already has like, should I call it auto snapping, something like that. Yes, auto snapping, where you see these guides that show you where, okay, this means that this is at the edge, right? If you hold shift, it should allow you move this thing in line without it shifting. For this, I put this in auto layout so that once I duplicate, I don't have to start adjusting, making any further adjustments to, the spacing or whatever. For this particular section, for Figma, if you should, let me bring this. Okay, now I've selected this. Let me say that I just created this now, and I want to have a repetition of this in line. If I duplicate the first time and just move it to where I want it to be without performing any other action, if I continue to hit duplicate, it's going to maintain that spacing, that exact spacing that I gave it to this one until I'm tired. So these are things you're going to learn the more you use Figma, because if we start talking about the different things you can do with Figma now, we'll probably sleep here. Yeah. But let me know, I mean, are you still confused about anything?
Okay, I'm not confused. I think I get the point. But how did you do that auto snapshot? I think auto something on the
It's
tape
auto
too.
layout. Okay, auto layout is Shift A. So if you hold the Shift key and A, you're going to get the auto layout. It's also here at your control panel. Sorry, not control panel. Not control panel. But yeah, your objects, or should I call it details or whatever, whenever you select something, you're going to see the option to add auto layout if you want to. So now that it's active, this is highlighted. If I remove it, this is just going to turn to a frame and it will stop giving like an auto layout. So it's a whole lot of jargon. I'll probably share a link later on Figma so that you guys can see certain things you can do with Figma. That should also help you out.
Thank you very much, man. We really appreciate it, man. Thank you, man.
All right, sure, no problem. So for the navigation, I went and I used circles. Nobody told me that I used circles in this thing, when I should be using the rectangle to show that these are icons. So I'm just going to add that now. So these are just for my navigation. I don't know what they are going to be yet, but I know that we are going to have navigation at the bottom. Just space this out and just center. Yeah. What else could we have? Maybe we have different food options or restaurants. Let me just use a rectangle for the text because it's easier to edit and to work with, just faster to work with. So I'm going to arrange this and put somewhere here. Not bothered about the spacing because we're still going to figure that out. So I'm just going to remember to show that this is an image, maybe the image of the restaurant or the food they are selling there. I'm just going to add this and add this. Let's say this is probably a food from the restaurant, right? The a food. So this is probably the details of what that meal is. I want to add an image of the restaurant. Now I'm using a circle, but I'm still going to add these lines to show that it's more like an image. A circle because I mean that is what is going to fit in. I don't know how else to explain it, but yes, that's what is going to fit in. So let me just add a stroke again and align this. Just eyeball on whatever. And yeah, So I have this group, probably going to have more repetitions of it, depending on how you want to arrange your layout. You probably want to have a name for this section. Maybe you're now grouping things in sections, right? So you can use a rectangle, or you can just simply use a text to say that, okay, these are categories. So this is just categories. I'm not going into the detail what that category is about. All I know is that it's category. And yeah. So because I'm probably going, come on. Because I'm probably going to have repetitions of this, just going to duplicate, drag it down, whatever. I mean, I don't know because I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Is there anything we are missing? Oh, it looks like there's something we are missing. So depending, big man. This depends on the type of experience you're aiming for, but you might want people to be able to have a profile. I mean, since they added their name and stuff like that, so they should probably have a section where they add where they can see their profile. It just makes sense that exists. So I'm just going to add this again and add the stroke and then add the details. So let me just duplicate this since I already have it. Duplicate, carry it out, bring it here. I want this to be smaller. What I did now is just that I locked the aspect ratio of this so it's so that it scales properly. I'm just going to have group this, move this closer, whatever I want to do, whatever should lead me somewhere if I wanted to. Okay, so probably going to have notifications as well somewhere at the top. So I'm just going to duplicate this and add this here. I know that this is for notifications. So I think we have seen, yeah, menu notifications exactly. So let me just duplicate this. So we are probably going to have for the menu, I'm not going to go for this. I'm just going to go for 2 lines because I think we already know what the menu looks like. I mean, it doesn't take away anything from the simplicity. That's just all I can say. Probably going to change this to auto layout so I can just duplicate this and make it 3. Enter. Going to change this to 2. Yeah. So I know that there is a menu and something else by the side of the menu. So this is, I mean, this is the very basic structure of the product we are going to be designing. So if I say I want to do mid fidelity, I can always refine this. Then I'll start checking, okay, what is the space in between this and this? What is the space in between this and this? And by then I'll start replacing these things with text, because definitely if I add a text, the height is definitely going to change. The width is definitely going to change. So mid fidelity is supposed to be somewhere between low and high, right? So it doesn't have to be so abstract like low fidelity, but still not as detailed as high fidelity. Just like maybe this section now, I can still leave it because I know it's an image, which I'm going to have refined to the utmost level when I get to high fidelity. Do you have any question? Because I feel like this says, I mean, this pretty much illustrates what wireframing is about. So any questions before we end class? Yes, Charles, please go ahead.
Talking about mid fidelity, my question is a direct question. Is
Okay.
it compulsory that we have a mid fidelity, or we can go from low fidelity to high fidelity?
Okay. It's not compulsory, let me let me say this. Nothing is compulsory in design because most times, except when you're doing your case studies, but most times, what you want to see are results. You can run around, do mid fidelity, do this, do that, but you don't have results. Also, as I have mentioned before, and I'll mention again, it all depends on who you're working with. If your client says that they want to see mid fidelity, you will deliver mid fidelity. Even if you don't want to do it, you deliver it. If your client says, okay, we don't have time, we don't even have time to do low fidelity, if you're doing it, the cost is on you, but it's just because of your workflow. That's why you're doing it. You're not doing it because it's relevant to the client. That one is your personal business. If the team you're working with, they have somebody who does research, those people can do these wireframes and share with you while you then refine. Maybe what you just do there is UI design. All you have to do is just to refine the design. Is that clear?
Yes, very much clear. Thank you so much for the explanation.
All right, sure. Any other question? I guess we don't have any other question. If we don't, we can end the class because I don't think there is any other thing to say about low fidelity, mid fidelity sketching. I'm going to share a video on wireframing. You can just look at it if you think it's relevant or it could help you in any way. Yes, please go ahead.
The question I want to ask, I don't think I should ask it now, but let me just ask for asking sake.
Okay.
The softwares for getting um low fidelity sketches like this, I think, or should I say, is it compulsory that we get those softwares, or we can just stick to using Figma as a choice?
Okay, you can stick with Figma. I mean, your tool does not matter. It's what you're delivering at the end that matters. There's Miro. Miro has, should I call it templates? And Figma now as well. Figma has Figma AI, right? So sometimes when you don't have energy, you can decide to use the AI to generate wireframes. I'm not recommending it, so I'm not recommending it. I'm just telling you that it's possible to do it in Figma. That's tell it to generate. Let me see if I can do it now, sir.
I want to say you show us how to generate using AI.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I'm using this
Then
team.
one more question, please.
Okay.
Forgive me, I've seen so many job posts regarding UI UX, and some of the requirements, they talk about knowing some of these tools.
Yeah.
For persons like us that are just learning, how do we break that barrier?
Okay. The way you can break that barrier is by learning how to use the tools. I know that, okay, when you are learning, it all feels slow, everything just happening slowly. But don't worry so much. Now and the next 10 years, there are still going to be job opportunities because you need to know how to use the tool. If you don't know how to use the tool, how do you design? That's it. So the barrier is to learn how to use the tools. In some job posting, you see where they say Figma, Sketch, and stuff like that. It's really Figma or Sketch or something. Most people now use Figma. So I'll tell you, don't bother about Sketch or maybe Adobe XD. Just learn how to use Figma, which learn how to use Figma. Which when I say 10 years, I mean even if it's in the next 10 years, there's still going to be job opportunities. So job is not going anywhere. That's what I'm saying. So just allow yourself to learn at this time. When you master, I mean, when you know how to use the tool, let me not use master yet, because every time we see new Figma updates, and all of us as designers, we go and learn how to use those Figma updates, right? So know how to be comfortable with using the tool, and have some products or some case studies handy, depending on the role you're applying to. Some roles could be internships, so they don't necessarily need you to have a whole lot of experience or a whole lot of product that you've worked on. So yeah, just learn for now. Just learn for now. That is how to break the barrier.
Thank you so much.
Okay, sure. So I would have to move to a different file, because this is a free project that we're using for the course. If you want to see Figma, AI in action, let me see. Which of these can I use? Okay, let me just use this file. Is there anything here? Okay, this is probably an empty file, I hope. Yeah, this is taking a while to load. This one open. This one open. Okay. You can see this, right? Let me. Why is this blocking? Please let me know if you can still hear me. Let me just be sure I know that I'm not talking to myself.
Yes, we can hear you, ma.
Okay. Sorry, please. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's my network or your line. Okay, it's probably just me. Let me just reduce. Figma AI here. Let me see. Okay. There is Figma AI here. People have it here. I want to be sure. Add interactions, rewrite this, filter and translate. Let me check picture. Let's see. Okay, where is this? So file to create. Before I even go too far, let me open some, because I always forget that there are plugins. Anything you're doing, there's probably a plugin for whatever you want to do. So you can always search. Let's see, wireframe. So as you can see here, there are different plugins. There's wireframer, there is this, there is this, there is this. So there is this one that calls itself wireframe designer. Since you're using a free plan of Figma, you might want to lean towards what is it called? Towards plugins instead. And yes, we can see this. So let's run. It's loading now. So let me wait for the prompt. Is it done? Okay. So it's asking what you would like to design. Now let's say sign up flow for a food delivery app. Let me just leave it vague like this and say design. Let's see what will happen. Okay, now, as you can see, this is what it has generated. For those of us that were bothered about mid fidelity and low fidelity, we really don't have to bother about all those things. As long as it's simple, right? It's not distracting. You're just focused on things that are necessary. You can you can definitely use this. Yes, you can go ahead.
Sorry, my network was really bad, so I don't know like how you get to this particular phase. Is this a plugin?
Yeah, it's a plugin.
What's the name?
Wireframe Designer, that's the name. Wireframe Designer. So
Yeah, okay, thank you.
yeah. Okay, so with this one, you can see that they have limitations. So after you have 10 designs you can do in a month. So when you exhaust the 10, they will ask you to upgrade, or you wait till next month. Or you wait till next month to continue designing. There is also the one called Wirebox. But to show you how Wirebox works, I need to get a design. Let me see which one can I. Which design can I? Let's go to this. Let me just show you how Wirebox works. Duplicate and move this out of the way. Let me just zoom in. And I'll search for Wirebox just because I know the name already. This is not very smart. So that is the problem using AI tools. Sorry, because they're still under under development. But let me see if I make this smaller. Let me see if this section alone would make more sense for it. Wirebox. Still misbehaving. Okay. If I undo. But the whole idea is Wirebox, when you already have a design that's high fidelity design, and or maybe somebody is telling you that they want to see the wireframe that you did. That is what Wirebox is supposed to do for you. Let me see if there is any alternative that would any alternative that we can use. And wireframe, UX magic, wireframe generator. These are all generators. I don't know what this one is, but let me see what it is. To create a system design, select a frame, select the color you want to change, click click the create button. I've never used this, so I can't really see how it works. But let me just see. Let me go for a darker color just to be safe. And if I hit create, oh, okay. So what if you can see what this one does is to simplify. So it basically just took out the image we had, then make this a rectangle, changed all of this to gray. That's what it did. So when you're working, you know the tool that works best for you, or if you just want to sketch on paper and rest, it's all fine as long as your design does the work it's supposed to do. So do I have any other question before I end the class? Okay. I guess there are no more questions. So oh, sorry. Is it me or is her voice breaking. Okay, sorry. Now.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Please, could you check the room?
Let me just put it.
I can't hear it. Could you type? I can't hear you clearly. Is it possible for you to type in the box so that I can just read? Okay, in list of the names, I guess you're talking about the plugins. Okay, I'm going to share that as well. But you can always go to Figma community to search for even more this thing, even more tools. But let me just share the ones I showed you guys today. So there is wireframe designer. There is wirebox. This one I use now, I can't remember the name. I guess I'd not pay attention to it. Let me see. It should still be here. Simplify wireframe. Okay. So I've sent the names. I said I'm going to get some videos that could help you guys wireframing and just using Figma generally. I'm going to share those this evening as well, or tonight. It's already night. All right, you're welcome. All
Okay,
right.
ma. Sorry, ma. I wanted to ask one more question, ma.
Yeah.
This wireframing we did today, we went through the normal process of creating new accounts, or we went through FigJam. So I wasn't in the beginning of the class, so I didn't know how you come about this interface.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Was it?
Do you have a Figma account? Let me be sure.
Yes, I do, ma.
Okay, so Figma just creates a Figma file. It's just a normal Figma file, not FigJam. So when you create it, you just start using the tools like the rectangle, the frame tool in Figma to start creating all of this.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome. Okay. All right then. I guess we'll see next week. Somebody else is taking the class tomorrow. So good night.